The View. October 14th, 8:00 p.m. A hand is raised in anger and a room full of socialites holds its breath. I am Kate Lawson, and the stinging red mark on my cheek is the only honest thing in this ballroom. The air smells of expensive champagne and heavy betrayal, thick with the lies my parents told to cover their debts. They thought erasing me would secure their legacy, but they forgot that silence is just a container for the truth. I didn't run from the humiliation. I weaponized it. This is the story of how I turned a moment of public shame into the calculated dismantling of everything they held dear. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We always appreciate the time you spent here with us. The night my ex-boyfriend slapped me in front of my entire family, there was a $50,000 diamond ring on my younger sister's finger, and my father was smiling. If you could freeze that moment in time, capture it like a crime scene photo, the details would tell you everything you needed to know about the people who raised me. You would see the crystal chandeliers of the venue catching the light, the horrified faces of the guests who had been promised a polite, drama-free evening, and the absolute terrifying rage in Ethan's eyes. You would see me, Kate Lawson, standing there with my cheek stinging, the metallic taste of blood filling my mouth, realizing that the physical pain was the least significant part of the assault. The real violence was in the context. The real violence was in the fact that as I scanned the room, looking for a single ally, looking for my mother or my father to step forward and defend me, I saw only complicity. My mother was adjusting her pearls, looking embarrassed not for me, but by me. And my father. He was looking at Ethan, the man who had just struck his daughter, with a look that bordered on pride. I had walked into that room thinking I was crashing a party to demand the truth. I didn't realize I had walked into an ambush. I was the only person in that room who hadn't read the script. Everyone else knew. They had all signed off on my erasure. But to understand why that slap shattered my world, you can't just look at the violence. You have to understand the silence that came before it. You have to understand the life I was living while they were plotting my replacement. Before the slap, before the betrayal turned my life into a spectacle, I was the definition of the responsible one. I was 28 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city that smelled faintly of old carpet and other people's cooking. I worked a mid-level marketing job at a logistics company, unsexy, demanding but stable. I was proud of that stability. I was proud that when my car broke down, I paid for the repairs myself. I was proud that I had paid off my student loans without asking my parents for a dime. I had built a life that was small, quiet, and mine. This independence was my armor. It was how I distinguished myself from the suffocating, manicured world my parents inhabited. Robert and Linda Lawson lived in a sprawling colonial in a suburb where the homeowners association wielded more power than the local government. It was a world of country club memberships, leased luxury SUVs that were always the latest model, and a crushing silent pressure to maintain the appearance of wealth. My parents were masters of the "we're doing fine" performance. They measured their self-worth by the envy of their neighbors. I had always felt like an observer in their world, never a participant. I was the sturdy, practical daughter, the one who didn't need to be worried about, the one who could be ignored because I wouldn't make a scene. I accepted this role. I told myself it was better to be ignored than to be controlled. I thought I had escaped their gravity. But the one thing I hadn't escaped, the one thing I had allowed myself to need, was Ethan. Ethan was the exception to my rules. We met 5 years ago, and he was everything I wasn't: effortlessly charming, ambitious, from a family with connections that my parents drooled over. He had that specific kind of confidence that comes from never having seen a credit card declined. I fell for him with a desperation I tried to hide. I thought we were building a partnership. I thought we were a team. For 4.5 years, I sacrificed everything for him. I don't use that word lightly. I sacrificed my financial security, my career trajectory, and my pride. When he decided to go back to grad school to pivot his career, I was the one who picked up the slack. I covered the rent on our shared apartment for 18 months. I skipped family vacations to save money for his tuition gaps. I turned down a promotion that would have required travel because he said he needed me home to support him during his finals. I remember one night specifically about a year ago. It was 2:00 a.m., and I was sitting at the kitchen table rewriting his capstone project because he was too stressed to focus. He was asleep in the other room. I was exhausted, my eyes burning drinking stale coffee, but I kept typing because I believed in us. I believed that his success would be our success. I was investing in a future that I thought was guaranteed. 6 months ago, that investment was liquidated. The breakup wasn't a fight. It was a monologue. Ethan sat me down on the beige sofa I had paid for and gave me the speech. He looked pained, almost noble, as if breaking my heart was a burden he was bravely shouldering. "Kate," he said, staring at a spot on the rug just past my left foot. "We've just grown apart. I'm not ready for the kind of commitment you need. I need to find myself. I need to figure out who I am without a safety net." I remember feeling a dull, heavy shock. "Find yourself?" I asked. "Ethan, we're planning a life." "I know," he said, his voice soft, practiced. "And that's not fair to you. You deserve someone who is 100% in. Right now, I can't be that guy. I need space. I need to be alone." I believed him. That's the humiliating part. I believed he was having an existential crisis. I packed my bags with a sense of tragic nobility. I thought I was respecting his journey. I moved out. I found my own place. I cried in the shower so my new neighbors wouldn't hear me. I spent 6 months meticulously rebuilding my sense of self, telling myself that it was a mature, necessary end to a chapter. I didn't know that finding himself was code for finding my sister. And then there was Emily. If I was the responsible one, my sister Emily was the investment. 4 years younger, blonde, petite, and radically dependent Emily was the golden child in a way that was almost biblical. My parents didn't just love her, they curated her. She was their second chance at high society. While I was praised for my resilience, which is just a nice word for having a high tolerance for neglect, Emily was praised for her potential. Parents like mine view their children as assets. I was the bond, low-yield, safe, boring. Emily was the cryptocurrency, volatile, high maintenance, but with the potential for a massive payout if she married the right man. Growing up, the favoritism was a quiet, constant hum. It was in the Christmas gifts I got textbooks and practical coats. Emily got jewelry and trips to Europe. It was in the emotional support when I had a bad day, I was told to toughen up. When Emily had a bad day, my mother would drive 2 hours to take her to lunch. They excused her mistakes as youthful indiscretions while judging my every decision with a magnifying glass. But in the last year, the dynamic had shifted from simple favoritism to something more threatening. The air in my parents' house had grown thick with financial anxiety. My father's construction business was struggling. I knew this not because they told me, but because I saw the way he drank scotch on Tuesday nights, the way he snapped at waiters, the way the mail piled up unopened on the hall table. My mother's obsession with appearances had turned manic. She was spending money they didn't have to keep up with neighbors who didn't care. They needed a win. They needed a lifeline. I remember a dinner just before Ethan and I broke up. We were all at my parents' house, me, Ethan, Emily, and my folks. The tension in the room was palpable, masked by expensive wine and forced laughter. Emily was wearing a dress that was slightly too formal for a Sunday dinner, sitting across from Ethan. My mother swirled her Chardonnay, her eyes locking onto Ethan. "You know, Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with that saccharine tone she used when she wanted something. "The Miller girl just got engaged to a hedge fund manager, a 3-carat ring. Can you imagine it's such a relief for her parents, to know she's taken care of, to know the families are aligned?" "It's important," my father added, cutting his steak aggressively. "Merging families. It's about more than just romance. It's about strategy, security. If Emily marries right, she'll be set for life. And frankly, so will we. It's the way the world works." I remember feeling a cold spike of annoyance. "Mom, Dad, can we not talk about Emily's hypothetical marriage as a business transaction?" I asked. Oh, stop it, Kate. My mother snapped, her mask slipping for a fraction of a second. You're so cynical. We're just talking about reality. Ethan understands, don't you, Ethan? Ethan had smiled. He didn't look at me. He looked at Emily. I understand completely, Linda. Legacy is important. At the time, I thought he was just being polite to my difficult parents. I thought he was on my side, enduring their materialism for my sake. I didn't see the look that passed between him and Emily, a quick conspiratorial glance that should have set off every alarm bell in my head. I didn't see that I was being phased out of the conversation because I wasn't the one they were negotiating with. In the 6 months since the breakup, my family had effectively ghosted me. It wasn't an abrupt cutoff, it was a slow, agonizing fade. Calls went unanswered. Texts received one-word replies days later. When I did get my mother on the phone, she was breathless, distracted always, running out the door, or dealing with a crisis. We're just so busy, Kate, she would say. You know how it is. You're busy too, right, with your work? I'm fine, Mom. I'd say, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. I just wanted to see if you wanted to grab lunch this weekend. Oh, this weekend is bad. Dad has meetings, and Emily is dealing with some personal things. We'll rain check. You're doing okay though, right? You're strong. You handle things. You handle things. That was the refrain. It was permission for them to stop caring. It wasn't just neglect. Looking back, I can see it was containment. They were keeping me at arm's length so I wouldn't see what was happening closer to home. They were managing me. I spent those months oscillating between anger and a deep, hollow sadness. I wanted to shake them. I wanted to scream, I am your daughter too. I am the one who actually helps you. But the American good girl conditioning runs deep. I didn't want to be the dramatic ex-girlfriend. I didn't want to be the needy daughter. So I swallowed the rejection. I focused on my job. I focused on the illusion that I was moving forward while they were secretly rewriting my history. The night before the truth came out, I was sitting in my apartment. It was a Friday night. It was raining, the kind of gray, miserable rain that makes the city look like it's melting. I was alone. I had ordered Thai food and was scrolling through social media, a habit that had become a form of emotional self-harm. I saw friends from college posting engagement photos. I saw coworkers posting baby announcements. I saw a world that was knitting itself together in pairs and communities. And then I looked at my own phone. No missed calls, no unread messages. My family lived 20 minutes away in a house full of lights and noise, and I might as well have been on the moon. I felt a profound sense of wrongness. Not just loneliness, but a vibration in the air that suggested something was shifting. It was the feeling of the tide pulling back before a tsunami, though I couldn't name it then. I just felt discarded. I thought about Ethan. I wondered if he had found himself yet. I wondered if he ever thought about the nights I stayed up editing his work, or the money I lent him that he never paid back. I wondered if he missed me. My phone sat silent on the coffee table. The silence was heavy, threatening. It wasn't peaceful. It was the sound of secrets being kept. I turned off the TV and sat in the dark, listening to the rain, telling myself that I was better off alone. I told myself that my independence was a prize, not a consolation. I didn't know that at that exact moment in a private dining room, I would never be invited to my sister was holding Ethan's hand. I didn't know my parents were raising a glass of champagne, celebrating the merger that had cost me my relationship and my dignity. I didn't know that the people I loved most in the world hadn't just moved on, they had conspired to erase me. But the silence was about to end, and the noise that replaced it would destroy everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and love. The unraveling of my life didn't begin with a shout. It began with a pixelated slip-up on a Tuesday evening. It had been a week of silence from my family, a heavy, deliberate radio silence that I had tried to interpret as them being busy. I was sitting on my couch, exhausted from a budget meeting at work, mindlessly scrolling through Instagram to decompress. My thumb was on autopilot, swiping past ads for meal kits and photos of friends' dogs until it froze. The algorithm, in its cold efficiency, had served me a photo from a suggested account, a local high-end event planner I didn't follow. The caption read, "Magical Nights in the Making." Hashtag Lawson event. Our love is in the air. I stared at the image. It was a candid shot taken on a terrace I recognized as The View, one of the most expensive venues in the city. In the foreground, looking radiant and terrified, was my sister Emily. She was wearing a dress that wasn't quite a wedding gown, but it was aggressive in its whiteness, a shimmering floor-length silk number that screamed bride. But it was the figure in the background, slightly out of focus, that made the blood drain from my face. He was turned away from the camera holding a drink, but I knew the set of those shoulders. I knew the way he stood, weight shifted to his left leg. I knew the watch on his wrist because I had bought it for his 27th birthday, emptying my savings account to do it. It was Ethan. My breath hitched in my throat. I zoomed in, pinching the screen until the image blurred into jagged squares. There was no mistaking it. Ethan and Emily at a luxury venue with a hashtag that combined our family name with love. I clicked on the comments. There were only 3, but they were enough to act as a defibrillator to my anxiety. So happy for you two. Finally, a match made in heaven. Can't wait for the big announcement. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird-like rhythm. Finally. What did finally mean? I checked the timestamp, posted 2 hours ago. I closed the app and immediately dialed my mother. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. It rang 4 times before she picked up, her voice breathless and tight, the background noise a murmur of clinking glass and low conversation. "Kate, honey, I can't really talk right now. We're in the middle of something." "Mom," I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy in my own ears. "Where are you? I just saw a picture on Instagram. Is that Emily at The View?" There was a pause, a beat of silence that stretched too long. I heard her cover the receiver, a muffled exchange with someone nearby, before she came back on the line. "Oh, you saw that?" Her tone shifted, becoming dismissive, the way you talk to a child who's asking too many questions about bedtime. "It's nothing, Kate. Just a little family dinner. Emily's. Well, she's had some good news and we wanted to celebrate. We didn't want to bother you with it." "Bother me?" I stood up, pacing the length of my small living room. "Mom, Ethan is in the background. Why is my ex-boyfriend at a family dinner?" "Kate, stop!" She snapped, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You're being dramatic. Ethan is... well, he's part of the circle. You know that. Look, this isn't the time. You've been so busy with your own life, so distant lately. We didn't think you'd be interested in family politics." She was doing it again, twisting the reality, making my exclusion my fault. "I haven't been distant, you've been ignoring me," I protested, but she cut me off. "I have to go. People are waiting. We'll talk later. Just don't read into things." The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling the gaslighting settle over me like a suffocating blanket. Don't read into things. I looked back at the photo. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't reading into things. I was reading the writing on the wall. 10 minutes later, the second shoe dropped. It came in the form of a text message from my cousin Sarah, the only person in my extended family who didn't treat gossip like a contact sport. "Hey," the text read. "I just got here and... wow. Are you okay? I know this must be weird for you, but Aunt Linda said you gave them your blessing. I just wanted to check in. This is a lot." I stared at the screen. Gave them your blessing. The words swam before my eyes. I typed back, my fingers trembling. Blessing for what? Sarah, 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then a hesitation. "Oh my God. You don't know. Know what, Kate? They're celebrating the engagement. Emily and Ethan. They're getting married. The world didn't spin. It stopped. It just stopped. The air left the room. I sat down heavily on the floor, the carpet scratching my legs. Engaged. My sister and my ex-boyfriend. The man who 6 months ago told me he needed to find himself. The sister who I used to carry on my hip when we were kids. Nausea rolled over me in a violent wave. I didn't cry. I went cold. Ice cold. This wasn't just a breakup. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a conspiracy. I needed proof. I needed to see the blast radius. I went into forensic mode. I opened my laptop and started digging, fueled by a sickly adrenaline. I went back to the event planner's page. I found the location tag. I found the photographer's Instagram story, which was still live. I watched a 15-second clip of the venue. There were my parents holding court. My dad was laughing, clapping a man on the back, a man I recognized as Ethan's father, the wealthy investor my dad had been desperate to court. And then the camera panned to the center of the room. There was Emily holding up her left hand. Even on the grainy screen, the diamond was unmistakable. It was massive, an oval cut. The exact cut I had told Ethan I liked 3 years ago when we were walking past a jewelry store window and dreaming about a future that didn't exist. I started cross-referencing dates. I went back through Emily's old posts. I looked for the clues I had missed. 3 months ago, Emily posted a photo of date night with just 2 glasses of wine. I checked the background. The tablecloth pattern matched a bistro Ethan loved. 4 months ago, Ethan's Venmo, which I still followed, showed a payment to a florist. For the view. I had assumed it was for his mom. Now I knew it was for my sister. 5 months ago, a weekend where my parents said they were going to the lake house. Ethan had told me he was going on a solo hiking trip to clear his head post-breakup. I checked the weather for that weekend at the lake. It had rained. I checked Emily's tagged photos. A friend had posted a throwback of them at the lake house, date-stamped that same weekend. The timeline clicked into place with a sickening clarity. They hadn't just reconnected recently. This had been going on for months, maybe longer. The overlap was undeniable. When Ethan was giving me his "I need to find myself" speech, he was already sleeping with my sister. My parents weren't just protecting Emily's secret, they were facilitating the affair. They were the chaperones to my humiliation. I felt a surge of rage so pure it almost blinded me. I picked up the phone again. I didn't call my mom. I called my dad. He answered on the second ring, his voice booming and jovial, clearly a few drinks in. "Robert Lawson speaking." "Dad," I said. "It's Kate." The joviality vanished instantly. "Kate, we're in the middle of a toast. This isn't a good time." "Is Emily engaged to Ethan?" I asked. No preamble, no softness. He sighed a heavy, impatient sound. "Who told you? Does it matter? Is it true?" "Kate, listen," he said, his voice dropping to that patronizing tone he used when explaining why he couldn't pay a vendor on time. "It's complicated. Love is messy. They didn't plan for this to happen. It just happened. They found each other. And honestly, we didn't tell you because we knew you'd react like this." "React like what?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Like a person, like a sister." "Dad, he's my ex-boyfriend of 5 years. We lived together." "That was in the past, Kate," he snapped. "You need to let it go. Emily is happy. Ethan is stepping up. He's going to take care of her. This is good for the family. Don't be selfish." Good for the family. The mask was off. It wasn't about love. It was about the merger. It was about Ethan's family money saving my father's sinking ship. "You lied to me," I said, my voice shaking. "You all lied to me. You made me feel crazy for thinking you were distant. You gaslit me for months." "We were protecting you," he said, and I could hear the self-righteousness in his voice. "We wanted to wait until things were settled to tell you properly. We didn't want you to ruin it for them." "Ruin it?" I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "You think I'm the one ruining this?" "Look, Kate," he said, his tone hardening. "If you can't be happy for your sister, then maybe it's best you stay away for a while. Let them have their night. Don't cause a scene. We're doing this for everyone's benefit." He hung up. I sat in the silence of my apartment, the rejection vibrating in my bones. Don't cause a scene. That was the Lawson family motto. Betrayal was fine, lies were acceptable. Financial exploitation was just business, but causing a scene, that was the unforgivable sin. My laptop dinged. A notification. My cousin Sarah had sent me a screenshot. I shouldn't send this, she wrote. But I think you need to see it. I thought you were invited and just didn't come. It was a digital copy of the invitation, heavy cream-colored cardstock with gold foil lettering. Robert and Linda Lawson request the pleasure of your company at the engagement celebration of their daughter Emily Lawson to Ethan Miller. I scanned the guest list visible on the RSVP link Sarah had grabbed. I saw my cousins. I saw family friends. I saw neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years. I saw people who knew me, who knew Ethan and me as a couple. My name wasn't there. I wasn't just uninvited. I was erased. They had curated a reality where I didn't exist, where Emily and Ethan were a fresh, untainted love story, and I was just... What a glitch. A mistake to be edited out in post-production. They were all there right now, drinking champagne, laughing. Ethan was probably telling that story about how he knew the moment he saw her, while my parents nodded and smiled, counting the potential dollars in his bank account. They were banking on my shame. They were banking on the fact that Kate Lawson was the responsible one, the one who would sit at home, cry quietly, and never ever make waves. They were banking on the wrong daughter. I stood up. I walked to my bedroom closet. My heart was pounding, but my hands had stopped shaking. A cold, hard clarity had replaced the panic. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Jeans and a t-shirt. Red-rimmed eyes. A victim. No, I whispered. I pushed the hangers aside until I found it. A dress I had bought for a gala I never went to because Ethan had claimed he was too tired. It was black, sleek, sharp. It fit like a second skin and looked like dangerous confidence. I wasn't going to go there to scream. I wasn't going to go there to cry. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. I was going to go there to be seen. I stripped off my clothes and pulled the black dress on. It zipped up with a sound like a weapon being loaded. I went to the bathroom and fixed my face. I covered the redness. I applied lipstick the color of a fresh bruise. I pulled my hair back tight. The American Good Girl script says you stay away. You take the high road. You let them have their happiness. But the other American script, the one about freedom, the one about truth, says that you have the right to face your accusers. You have the right to stand in the public square and let the truth be known. They wanted a drama-free night. They wanted to pretend I didn't exist. I grabbed my keys. I checked my phone battery full. I checked my resolve ironclad. I was going to the engagement party, not to celebrate, but to witness. I wanted to look my father in the eye. I wanted to see Ethan's face when the ghost walked in. I walked out of my apartment, leaving the silence behind. I was done being the secret they kept. Tonight I was the news they couldn't control. The drive to the View felt less like a commute and more like a funeral procession for the person I used to be. The venue sat atop the highest hill in the county, a sprawling estate of white stone and manicured ivy that looked down on the rest of the city with architectural disdain. When I pulled up to the valet stand, my 5-year-old sedan looked like a dirty joke next to the parade of G-Wagons, Teslas, and vintage convertibles. The valet, a kid no older than 19 with an acne-scarred chin, hesitated before opening my door. He looked at my car, then at the glittering entrance, then back at me. Checking in for the Lawson-Miller engagement, he asked, his tone suggesting I might be at the wrong address, perhaps looking for the service entrance. Yes, I said, stepping out. The night air was cool, but my skin felt hot, prickly, with a mixture of terror and adrenaline. I handed him my keys. Keep it close, I won't be staying long. I walked up the limestone steps, the sound of my heels clicking like a countdown. The double doors were manned by private security, a beefy man in a suit that strained at the shoulders. He held a clipboard, the gatekeeper to my family's curated fantasy. Name, he grunted, not looking up. Kate Lawson, I said. I'm the bride's sister. He paused, his finger scrolling down the list. I watched his eyes scan. Up, down. He frowned. I knew my name wasn't there. My parents were thorough. They hadn't just forgotten to invite me. They had explicitly excluded me. I don't see a Kate on the list, ma'am, he said, stepping slightly in front of the door. Check again. I said, my voice steady, channeling every ounce of corporate authority I had learned in boardrooms. I'm Robert Lawson's eldest daughter. If you turn me away, you're going to have to explain to him why you caused a scene at the front door while his guests are arriving. Do you really want to be the reason his daughter is shouting on the front steps? It was a bluff, but it struck the right chord. Security guards at these events are paid to maintain flow, not to arbitrate family disputes. He hesitated, weighing the risk of a loud noise against the risk of a clerical error. Go ahead, he muttered, stepping aside. But keep it low profile. Always, I lied. I pushed through the doors and the sensory overload hit me instantly. The smell of expensive lilies, heavy and funeral sweet. The sound of a string quartet playing a sterilized cover of a pop song I used to love. The shimmer of sequins and the dull roar of polite, wealthy laughter. The room was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. Waiters wove through the crowd with trays of champagne moving like invisible servants. I stood by the entrance for a moment, letting my eyes adjust, feeling like an alien species in a habitat I was supposed to be native to. And then I saw them. They were standing near the center of the room under a massive crystal chandelier that cast a fractured light over their heads. Emily was glowing. She wore a white dress that was technically cocktail attire, but spiritually a wedding gown, silk, backless, expensive. On her hand, the diamond caught the light, flashing like a beacon. And Ethan. He looked exactly the same. He was wearing the navy suit I had helped him pick out for his sister's wedding 2 years ago. He had his hand on the small of Emily's back, a possessive, intimate gesture that used to be mine. He was laughing at something a guest said, throwing his head back in that way that used to make me smile. Now it made my stomach turn over. They looked perfect. They looked like a magazine ad for the American dream. And everyone around them, my aunts, my uncles, people I had known since I was a child, was smiling at them, feeding the lie. I took a step forward, then another. I moved through the crowd like a ghost. People glanced at me, their eyes sliding away, then snapping back as recognition hit. I saw the whispers start, a ripple of confusion. Is that Kate? What is she doing here? I thought she was away. I didn't stop until I was 20 feet from them. My mother saw me first. Her smile dropped instantly, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated panic. She abandoned her conversation with a local judge and beelined toward me, her heels clicking rapidly on the marble. My father was right behind her, his face flushing a dangerous shade of red. They intercepted me near a pillar, blocking my line of sight to the happy couple. What the hell are you doing here? My mother hissed, grabbing my upper arm. Her grip was tight, her nails digging into my skin. We told you this was a private family moment. I am family, I said, pulling my arm away. Or did that change when the bank account balance did? Lower your voice, my father growled, stepping into my personal space. He smelled of scotch and fear. You look insane, Kate. Showing up uninvited in that dress, you're making this about you. I'm not making it about anything, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my voice remaining frighteningly calm. I just wanted to congratulate the happy couple. Unless there's a reason I shouldn't. We didn't invite you for a reason, my mother whispered, her eyes darting around to see if anyone was watching. We wanted a drama-free night. We knew you couldn't handle this with grace. Drama-free. The phrase landed like a knife. They didn't want peace. They wanted silence. They wanted the comfort of their deception without the inconvenience of my existence. I'm perfectly graceful, I said. I'm just here to witness the integrity of this family. Before they could drag me out, the music stopped. The room went quiet. A man with a microphone, the MC, tapped the glass. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. My parents froze. They were trapped. They couldn't drag me out now without causing the exact scene they were terrified of. They stood on either side of me, rigid sentinels hoping I would just stand there and take it. "We are gathered here to celebrate love," the MC boomed. "Real, enduring love. Please welcome the man of the hour, Ethan Miller." Ethan stepped up to the small microphone stand next to Emily. He looked confident, the picture of a reformed bachelor settling down. He took Emily's hand and looked into her eyes. The room swayed with a collective awe. "Thank you all for coming," Ethan said, his voice smooth, projected through the speakers. "You know, people ask me how I knew Emily was the one. And I tell them it wasn't just her beauty, though she is beautiful." A polite chuckle from the crowd. "It was her honesty, her heart. We built this relationship on a foundation of truth. I spent a long time looking for myself, looking for a partner who understood the value of integrity. And I found her." He paused for effect, looking out at the crowd with a practiced sincerity. "I want to build a future with integrity, with transparency. That's what this family represents to me." The word integrity hung in the air. It vibrated in my ears. It was a physical blow. To hear him use that word after lying to my face for months, after using my money, after sleeping with my sister while I was editing his resume, it broke something inside me. It broke the good girl programming. I didn't plan it. I didn't think it. It just came out. "Integrity," I said. It wasn't a scream. It was a clear, projected question that cut through the silence of the room like a gunshot. Heads turned. The room went deathly still. Ethan froze mid-smile. Emily's eyes went wide. I stepped out from between my parents, walking into the open space of the floor. "Is that what you call it, Ethan?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly but gaining strength. "Integrity is integrity, sleeping with my sister in June while I was still paying your rent." Gasps. Audible gasps. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered, the sound incredibly loud in the silence. "Kate, stop!" My father barked, lunging for me, but I stepped out of his reach. I looked directly at Ethan. He looked like a deer in headlights, his charm evaporating instantly. "You said you needed to find yourself," I continued, addressing him but speaking to the room. "You told me you weren't ready for marriage. You told me we grew apart. But you didn't tell me you were already attending Sunday dinners here while I was at work. You didn't tell me you bought that ring." I pointed at Emily's hand, "Using the bonus check I helped you negotiate." "You're crazy," Ethan stammered, his face turning pale. He laughed nervously, looking at the guests. She's having a breakdown. She's been unstable since the breakup." "Unstable?" I laughed, and it sounded sharp, dangerous. "I have the receipts, Ethan. I have the Venmo transactions. I have the texts. I know about the hotel in Chicago. I know about the hiking trip that was actually a weekend at the lake house with my parents." I turned to my parents. "And you," I said, looking at my mother, "you told me to erase the past. Is that what this is? Erasing me so you can secure the investment?" Emily started to cry, a loud sobbing wail that felt performative. "She's ruining it, Mom. Make her stop. We didn't tell her because we knew she'd be like this." "She's jealous," my mother shouted, finally, finding her voice. She looked at the guests, pleading. "She's just jealous of her sister. She's always been jealous. Please ignore her." "I'm not jealous," I said, my voice dropping to a terrifying calm. "I'm disgusted." Ethan stepped off the small riser. He walked toward me, his face twisted into a snarl I recognized from the end of our relationship, the face he wore when he lost control. He got close, invading my space, trying to use his height to intimidate me. "Get out!" he hissed, low enough that the crowd couldn't hear the menace, but loud enough for me. "You're embarrassing yourself. You're a psycho. This is why I left you. You're pathetic." I looked up at him. I saw the sweat on his upper lip. I saw the fear behind the aggression. "Did you tell her about the night of May 12th? I asked softly, locking eyes with him. His eyes widened. "May 12th? I repeated louder. "The night you told me you were at a networking event, but you were actually at the Omni Hotel. I have the room service bill, Ethan, under your name, with her credit card. That was the breaker. The mask shattered. Shut up! He screamed. He swung. It wasn't a push. It wasn't a shove. It was a full, open-handed slap across my face. Crack! The sound was sickeningly loud, echoing off the high ceilings and the marble floors. The force of it knocked my head to the side. I stumbled, catching myself on a nearby table, my hand knocking over a flute of champagne. The string quartet stopped mid-measure. The room went absolutely silent. Not the silence of awkwardness, but the vacuum of shock. I stood there for a second, the sting spreading across my cheek like fire. I could taste copper. I had bitten my tongue. My ear was ringing. I slowly turned my head back to look at him. Ethan was breathing hard, his hands still raised slightly, as if he couldn't believe he had done it. Or maybe as if he wanted to do it again. People were frozen. But then the movement started. I saw phones coming out. I saw the red lights of recording indicators. Ethan! My mother's voice broke the trance. She rushed forward, but she didn't come to me. She didn't come to check on her daughter who had just been assaulted. She went to him. Ethan! Oh my God, calm down, she whispered, grabbing his arm, looking terrified, not of him, but for him. Don't do this here. Think about the guests. My father stepped between us, facing me. He looked at my red cheek, then looked me in the eye. There was no sympathy, only annoyance. You see what you did? He hissed at me. You pushed him. You provoked this. Go home, Kate. You've had enough. Get out before I call the police on you. I looked at them. My mother soothing the man who hit me. My father blaming me for the violence. My sister sobbing into her hands, playing the victim while I tasted blood. A waiter, a young man I didn't know, took a half step toward me, looking concerned. Miss, are you okay? My father waved him off. She's fine. She's leaving. I touched my cheek. It was hot. My skin felt tight. I looked at Ethan. He was composing himself, straightening his tie, whispering to my mother. He thought it was over. He thought the slap was the punctuation mark that would silence me. He thought he had won because he had exerted power. But he was wrong. In that moment, the nausea vanished. The heartbreak vanished. The lingering, pathetic hope that my family would wake up and love me vanished. What replaced it was cold, hard American steel. I realized something as I stood there, the center of their humiliation. They wanted a drama-free engagement. They wanted a perfect image. What they had just given me was a weapon. You hit me, I thought. In front of 200 people, in front of cameras. I straightened my back. I wiped the trickle of blood from the corner of my lip with the back of my hand. I looked at the blood on my skin. It was red, real, and undeniable. I'm leaving, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. But not because you told me to. I turned my back on them. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I walked. I walked past the staring guests, past the frozen waiters, past the cousins who wouldn't meet my eyes. I walked with the rhythm of someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to gain. I pushed through the double doors and into the cool night air. The valet was waiting, looking wide-eyed. He had clearly heard the commotion. He scrambled to get my car. I stood on the curb, the adrenaline finally starting to shake my hands. But my mind was crystal clear. Mr. Ballin always talks about the fatal mistake, the moment the villain gets too arrogant, too sloppy. This was it. Ethan's arrogance was his downfall. He thought he could slap me into submission like I was a hysterical woman in a 1950s movie. He didn't realize he had just handed me the keys to his destruction. I got into my car and locked the doors. The silence inside the vehicle was heavy, but it was safe. I didn't drive away immediately. I pulled my phone out of my purse. I opened my voice memo app. I hit record. My name is Kate Lawson, I said to the empty car, my voice trembling but strong. Tonight, my ex-boyfriend, who is engaged to my sister, assaulted me at their engagement party. My parents watched, and they did nothing. I stopped the recording. Then I opened my photos. I scrolled back to the screenshots, to the hotel receipts, to the timeline I had built in my apartment. They wanted to destroy me with lies. I was going to destroy them with the truth. I put the car in drive and pulled away from the view. As I drove down the hill watching the lights of the venue fade in my rearview mirror, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a prosecutor who had just been handed the smoking gun. The crying would come later. Tonight there was work to do. The drive home from the engagement party was a blur of highway lights and silence, but my mind was operating with the cold precision of a forensic accountant. I didn't go home to cry. I didn't go home to drink a bottle of wine and stare at the wall. I went home to work. When I walked into my apartment, I didn't turn on the warm lamps. I turned on the overhead fluorescent lights in my small home office. I felt like a detective walking into a precinct ready to build the case of my life. The slap on my cheek was throbbing, a hot, pulsing reminder of what they had done, but I pushed the pain into a box in the back of my mind labeled later. Right now I needed receipts. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. For the next 48 hours, I barely slept. I became an archaeologist of my own betrayal. I started with the digital footprint. I knew Ethan's passwords. He was creature of habit, using variations of his high school mascot and birth year. He had changed his main email, but I knew he never logged out of his old cloud account on my iPad, which was sitting in a drawer I hadn't opened in months. I plugged it in, waiting for the battery icon to fill, praying he hadn't forced a remote logout. The screen lit up. It connected to Wi-Fi. It synced. The influx of data was nauseating. It wasn't just a few texts. It was an entire parallel life. I found the backup folder of his WhatsApp chats. I found the photo stream. I started building a timeline, opening a fresh spreadsheet. Column A, what Ethan told me he was doing. Column B, the truth. February 14th, Valentine's Day. He had told me he was stuck at a conference in Boston. Evidence. A photo in his deleted folder timestamped February 14th, showing 2 pairs of feet in plush hotel robes. The geotag was a spa 30 minutes from my parents' house. Cross-reference, a Venmo transaction from Emily to Ethan for spa goodies. April 2nd. My birthday. He had taken me to a mediocre dinner and complained about a headache. Evidence. A text thread with my mother. Mom, don't stay out too long with Kate. Emily is waiting for you to come over for cake. We made your favorite. Ethan. I'll make it quick. She's being needy. I read that text 3 times. She's being needy. That was the night I had thanked him for trying, despite his headache. I had apologized for taking up his time. I kept digging. I matched hotel receipts to credit card statements. I found emails between Ethan and a jeweler dating back 3 months before we broke up. He was designing Emily's ring while I was helping him pay off the credit card debt he accrued, starting his business. But the personal betrayal was only half the story. I needed to understand the why. Why would my parents, who prided themselves on family image, co-sign this disaster? Why would they throw their eldest daughter into the fire? I found the answer in a folder of scanned PDFs on the family's shared cloud drive, a drive I had set up for my dad years ago to help him organize his business contracts. They had forgotten to remove my admin access. I opened a folder labeled Miller Investment. It wasn't a romantic union. It was a bailout. I read through the letter of intent. My father's construction company, Lawson Builds, was leveraged to the hilt. He was facing bankruptcy. There were angry letters from suppliers, threats of liens, and notices of default on loans. Then the solution. A private equity injection from Miller Holdings, Ethan's father's company. The dates aligned perfectly with the start of Ethan and Emily's affair. The terms were favorable, almost charitable. But there was no formal collateral listed. The collateral was Emily. My parents had sold my sister to save their lifestyle, and they had erased me because I was an obstacle to the deal. If I had made a fuss, if I had exposed Ethan as a cheater before the ink was dry, the Millers might have pulled the funding. My humiliation was a line item in their budget. I sat back in my chair, the room spinning slightly. It was so American in the darkest way possible. Money over morality, status over blood. I printed everything: the texts, the photos, the financial documents, the timeline. Then I did what a good daughter would never do. I put on a clean blazer, covered the bruise on my cheek with oversized sunglasses, and drove to the police station. The precinct was sterile, smelling of floor wax and stale coffee. I walked up to the desk sergeant. "I'd like to file a report for assault," I said. The officer looked up, bored. "Name, Kate Lawson. The assailant is Ethan Miller." I gave my statement calmly. I didn't cry. I described the event, the engagement party, the verbal confrontation, and the physical strike. I let the officer take photos of my face. The bruise had bloomed into a dark, ugly purple across my cheekbone. "Do you want to press charges?" the officer asked, looking at the photos with a wince. "Yes," I said. "And I want a copy of the report." Filing the report wasn't just about justice. It was about creating a public record. It was the first nail in the coffin of their drama-free narrative. When I got back to my apartment, I was ready for the next phase, the nuclear phase. I wrote the narrative. I didn't write it like a ranting ex-girlfriend. I wrote it like a journalist exposing a scandal. I titled it, "The Price of a Ring, a Timeline of Betrayal." I laid it out clearly. The dates, the lies, the financial coercion, the assault. I redacted the names of innocent bystanders, but I left Ethan, Emily, and my parents fully exposed. I attached the screenshots. I attached the police report number. Then I executed the distribution strategy. I didn't just post it to my Facebook wall where my aunt could hide it. First, I sent a formal email to the HR department and the ethics board of Ethan's consulting firm. Subject: report of assault and misconduct by employee Ethan Miller. I attached the police report and the evidence of him using company time and funds, which I found in the receipts to facilitate his affair. In corporate America, a man who hits a woman and misappropriates funds is a liability no matter who his father is. Second, I went to the Lawson family reunion group chat, a massive thread containing every cousin, aunt, uncle, and second cousin in 3 states. I attached the document. I typed one message: "You all asked why I wasn't invited. Here is the answer. Ask Robert and Linda why they sold one daughter and sacrificed the other. Send." Third, I posted a condensed version on social media: Instagram, LinkedIn, and a local community forum. I tagged the venue. I tagged Ethan. I used the hashtag from their party, #Lawson event. I turned off my phone, poured a glass of water, and waited. It took less than 20 minutes for the bomb to detonate. When I turned my phone back on, it vibrated so hard against the desk, it sounded like an angry hornet. 42 missed calls, 60 texts. The first voicemail was from my mother. "Kate, take it down. Take it down right now. You are ruining us. Ethan's father is threatening to pull the funding. How could you be so selfish?" She wasn't asking if I was okay. She was worried about the money. The second voicemail was from Ethan's mother. Her voice was trembling with suppressed rage. "We can settle this privately, Kate. There's no need to involve his employer. Think about his career. Think about his future." I deleted the voicemails without responding. I wasn't interested in their future. I was interested in my truth. Then the miracle happened. My cousin Sarah texted me, "Kate, holy shit, you need to see this. Someone posted the video." I clicked the link. It was a TikTok posted by a guest, probably a +1 who didn't care about the Lawson-Miller alliance. The caption read, "POV. You go to a fancy engagement party and the groom slaps the bride's sister. #drama, #rich people problems." The video was clear. It showed me standing my ground. It showed Ethan screaming. And it showed the slap, loud, brutal, and undeniable. It showed my parents doing nothing. The internet did what the internet does. The comments were vicious. Did he just hit her in front of everyone? The parents just stood there, trash. Cancel this man immediately. The video was the final piece of evidence that moved the court of public opinion from messy family drama to objective outrage. The fallout was swift and catastrophic. By Monday morning, Ethan was placed on administrative leave by his firm. Pending an internal investigation, the email auto-reply said. Clients who saw the video didn't want a man who assaults women handling their accounts. The optics were toxic. The Miller family, realizing their son was now radioactive, paused the investment deal with my father. They went into damage control mode, distancing themselves from the Lawsons to protect their own brand. My father's bailout evaporated overnight. Emily was destroyed socially. The other woman narrative is hard to shake in a small judgmental suburb, especially when it involves your own sister. Friends who had congratulated her on Friday were blocking her by Tuesday. She was no longer the golden child. She was the girl who stole her sister's boyfriend and stood by while he hit her. She was isolated, trapped in that big house, with parents who were now looking at her not as an asset but as a liability. And my parents. Their reputation in the community crumbled. The country club set loves gossip, but they hate scandal. The story of their financial desperation and their cruelty toward me spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. They were no longer the enviable Lawsons. They were the desperate broke couple who sold out their kids. But winning the war didn't mean I didn't have scars. Tuesday night, the adrenaline finally ran out. I was sitting on my floor surrounded by the printed evidence of my family's demise, and the silence rushed back in. But this time, it wasn't the silence of being ignored. It was the silence of being an orphan. I had burned the bridge. I had nuked the island. I was free, yes, but I was also alone. The reality of it hit me. I would never have a normal Christmas again. I would never have my dad walk me down the aisle. I had cut off the gangrenous limb, but I was still bleeding. I started to shake. A deep, cold tremor that started in my chest and radiated out to my fingers. I couldn't breathe. The weight of the grief, not for the family I had, but for the family I wished I had crushed me. Then there was a knock at the door. I ignored it. I didn't want to see anyone. The knock came again, louder. "Kate, I know you're in there. I saw your car." It was Maya. Maya was a coworker, a friend I grabbed lunch with, someone I liked, but had kept at a professional distance because I was so consumed by my family drama. I crawled to the door and unlocked it. Maya stood there holding 2 large pizzas and a bag of cheap wine. She took one look at me wearing sweatpants, hair a mess, bruise purple on my cheek, shaking like a leaf, and she didn't ask questions. She didn't ask for the gossip. She stepped inside, kicked the door shut behind her, and dropped the bags on the floor. She pulled me into a hug that felt like it could hold the pieces of me together. "I saw the post," she whispered into my hair. "And I saw the video. And I am so, so sorry." I finally broke. I sobbed into her shoulder, ugly heaving sobs that hurt my chest. I cried for the little girl who just wanted her dad to be proud of her. I cried for the years I wasted on Ethan. I cried for Emily, who was just as much a victim of my parents' greed as I was, even if she pulled the trigger. Maya just held me. She didn't tell me to hush. She didn't tell me to be the bigger person. "You didn't ruin your family, Kate," she said firmly, pulling back to look me in the eye. "They did that. They made a choice. They chose money and lies. You just turned the lights on." She walked me to the couch, poured the wine into mugs because I didn't have clean glasses, and sat with me. "You're not alone," she said. "You have people. You have the team at work. You have me. We're not going anywhere." That night, eating cold pizza with Maya, I learned the most important American lesson of all: blood is biology, but family is a choice. My parents had chosen their status. I was choosing my dignity. And for the first time in my life, looking at the friend sitting across from me, I realized I might actually be rich in the only currency that mattered. The war was over. The bad guys had lost. Now I just had to figure out how to live in the peace. The legal system in America is rarely satisfying. It is bureaucratic, slow, and transactional. 3 months after the slap heard round the suburbs, Ethan Miller stood in a sterile courtroom and pleaded no contest to simple assault. There was no grand dramatic speech, no tearful confession, just a man in an expensive suit mumbling, "Yes, Your Honor," to avoid a trial that would have aired even more dirty laundry. He got probation, mandatory anger management classes, and a permanent mark on his record. His lawyer tried to intimidate me into dropping the charges right up until the bailiff opened the doors. He talked about ruining a young man's potential and family matters being handled privately. I didn't flinch. I sat in the back row wearing a blazer I bought with my own money and watched the gavel come down. It wasn't justice in the cosmic sense he wasn't going to jail, but it was a legal validation of my reality. He hit me. The state acknowledged it. The record existed. Financially, the fallout was less tidy. I was still living in my thin-walled apartment. I was still driving my old sedan. The viral moment didn't make me rich. It just made me free. But there is a specific, quiet dignity in paying your bills with money that comes with no strings attached. I looked at my bank account, meager as it was, and felt a surge of pride. I wasn't an investment. I wasn't a liability. I was just Kate. The silence from the Lawson house changed texture in the weeks that followed. At first, it was the silence of rage, the kind that screams, "How dare you?" Then it became the silence of consequences. My father's business deal with the Millers was dead. The Lawson Build signs started disappearing from construction sites around town, replaced by competitors. The rumors were that he was liquidating assets to stave off bankruptcy. The country club membership was likely the first thing to go, followed by the leased SUVs. The cracks in their united front began to show through digital tremors. Late one Tuesday night, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my father. "We could have worked this out, Kate. You didn't have to burn the house down to stay warm." It was a half apology wrapped in a justification. He still saw my survival as an act of aggression. He still believed that my role was to set myself on fire to keep them comfortable. I didn't reply. I deleted the thread. A week later, a text from my mother. Short, clip. "I hope you're okay. The neighbors are talking." She wasn't worried about my soul. She was worried about the zip code's opinion. She was mourning her reputation, not her relationship with her daughter. I didn't reply to that one either. And then there was Emily. I expected her to be the most broken, but she was the most bitter. She had lost the ring, the fiancé, and the status in one fell swoop. Ethan had dumped her shortly after the scandal broke. His family needed to cut ties with the Lawsons to salvage their own image, and Emily was collateral damage. She called me from a number I didn't recognize. I made the mistake of answering. "Are you happy?" she screamed, her voice jagged with crying. "You won, Kate. You always have to win. You couldn't stand that I had something you didn't, so you destroyed it. You're a monster." I listened to her breath hitching on the other end. I felt a ghost of the old instinct, the urge to comfort her, to fix it, to tell her it wasn't her fault she was used as a pawn. But then I remembered the smirk on her face when she stood next to Ethan at the party. I remembered the months of lies. "I didn't win, Emily," I said quietly. "Nobody won. I just stopped playing." I hung up and blocked the number. That was the moment the door truly closed. I established a new boundary, one made of concrete and rebar. I would not be the emotional trash can for the people who broke me. I chose my peace over their comfort. It was the most selfish, healthy thing I had ever done. In the vacuum left by my family, I began to reclaim my voice. I kept writing. The narrative I had posted online had struck a nerve. Thousands of people had shared it, adding their own stories of toxic families, golden children, and the price of silence. I turned my notes into a series of essays on a platform for survivors of narcissistic abuse. I wasn't writing for revenge anymore. I was writing for clarity. I wrote about the good girl script. I wrote about the financial coercion that masquerades as parental love. I wrote about the moment you realize that drama-free is just a euphemism for compliance. People reached out. Not just internet strangers, but real people. A woman in Ohio sent me an email saying my story gave her the courage to leave a family business that was destroying her marriage. A teenager in Florida thanked me for showing that you can survive being the black sheep. I found meaning in the wreckage. I wasn't just the girl who got slapped. I was the girl who stood up. I was shaping my own mythology independent of the Lawson brand. My world grew larger, filled with people who chose to be there. Maya became a fixture in my life, not just a work friend. We started a Sunday tradition, orphan dinner, for friends who didn't fit into their biological families or lived too far away to travel. The first time I hosted looking around my small, cramped living room, I felt a warmth that had never existed in my parents' cavernous dining hall. There was cheap wine, there was mismatched cutlery, there was laughter that didn't feel performed. I joined a local support group for survivors of emotional abuse. The first time I walked in, I was terrified. But sitting in a circle of folding chairs in a church basement listening to a woman describe the exact same feeling of erasure I had felt for years, I realized the most profound truth of my new life. I belonged. I belonged to a community of people who valued truth over appearance. I belonged to myself. 6 months after the party, I found myself driving through my old neighborhood. I hadn't planned to. A detour for roadwork pushed me onto the familiar winding streets of the subdivision. I drove past the house. It looked different. The lawn was a little overgrown. The landscaping service had clearly been cut. There was a for sale sign pounded into the grass near the mailbox. Price reduced. I slowed down, but I didn't stop. I saw a figure in the window, maybe my mother pacing or my father staring out at a kingdom he had lost because he tried to leverage his own blood. I waited for the pain. I waited for the longing, the wish that things could be different. But it didn't come. I looked at the house and I felt nothing. It was just a house. It was just a pile of bricks and drywall where people I used to know lived. It wasn't home. It never really was. I pressed the gas pedal and the car hummed forward, leaving the driveway behind. I thought about the beginning of this story. I thought about the night Ethan slapped me. I thought about the sound of it, the shock, the way the room spun. I remembered my father's smile in the moments before the violence, the smile of a man who thought he had won the game. That memory used to haunt me. It used to make me wake up sweating. But as I turned onto the main road, merging into traffic, watching the sun dip below the horizon and paint the American sky in bruised purples and golds, the memory shifted. I didn't see my father's smile anymore. I didn't see Ethan's rage. I didn't see Emily's ring. I saw myself. I saw a woman in a black dress standing alone in a room full of enemies, wiping blood from her lip and refusing to crumble. I saw the moment I decided that I was worth more than their approval. I still remember the sound of that slap. But now when I hear it, it doesn't sound like a defeat. It sounds like a gavel coming down. It sounds like the start of the rest of my life. I turned up the radio, rolled down the window, and drove home. And that is where Kate's journey ends, proving that sometimes the best revenge isn't about making noise, but about finding the quiet strength to walk away. If you enjoyed this story of resilience and justice, please consider subscribing to the channel. Let us know in the comments below, did Kate make the right choice by exposing her family, or should she have stayed silent? We read every single comment of your thoughts. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Revenge Hour. We'll see you next time.